Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. James Blonde recently gifted a watch to the channel for the purpose of offering it up for trade. If you caught my first impressions of it, you know that I love this watch. This thing is so cool in person. So tonight we're going to do a full review of this watch, and it is now up for trade if anyone is interested in trading a watch for this one. That would be a permanent trade, so you get to keep this watch and I get to keep whatever you trade for it. So let's get started. Alright, so here is the Louis Rossel watch, and this piece is kind of a mystery. I've done some hunting. One of you was wanting to know what model number this was, and I've done some searching online and I've seen similar-ish pieces, but I haven't found this exact one yet. And I haven't found any information on the crystal. I'm assuming that is mineral or maybe even glass, or who knows. I mean, this whole watch feels heavy and solid, so I don't think that crystal is acrylic at all. So some of the details on this watch are still a mystery, like what movement is in it, so I'll have to do some more digging on that. So looking at the bracelet and the clasp, we have some branding here, which is also very vintage, space age looking. Very cool. And this is a pressed clasp. Unfortunately, this bracelet is a bit large on me, and I haven't wanted to mess with the pins here because I had a cheap friction fit pin removal tool, but the only pin portion of that tool that I have is bent and cheap and weird. So until I get a nicer friction pin removal tool, I'm not really going to mess with those at all. And if I tighten up these micro adjustments anymore, this will get stuck on the bracelet here. So I haven't been able to enjoy this watch really at all, sadly. But this is a friction clasp here. It seems to latch really solidly. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. And look at the sheer number of micro adjustments. That is proper. Looking at the rest of the bracelet, it's just solid, super thick metal. So as you can imagine, it has some weight to it, which is kind of cool. And what's crazy about this bracelet is look at the condition. This is a vintage watch and it still looks shiny and chrome-like. That's pretty cool. The lugs are hidden beneath here. Such a unique design. So cool. Let me pop open the clasp and we'll look at the case back. Yeah, that clasp is pretty decent to unhook, which is good. It's nice and secure when it's closed. And looking at the case back here. Attempting to look at the case back here. There we go. So we see there are some scratches from attempting to open up the case back there. So it's always good to use a bit of plastic, like a sandwich bag, to protect the back when you're using a case wrench. But we have some information here. This watch is all stainless steel, shock resistant, anti-magnetic, Swiss made, and it looks like it says that it was water resistant. Sorry about that going out of focus. I'm reading the case back over my camera. But it's kind of cool how flat this whole thing is. But the notches aren't very deep, so I could totally see how a wrench would slip out and scrape up this case back. Yeah. Looking at the sides of the case, this watch is somewhat thick, a little bit chunky, but that is such a cool case shape. I mean, absolutely 1960s World of Tomorrow style. The crown is somewhat tucked away in the side of the case there. This watch has an automatic movement in it, so you will be using this to set the time when you wake it up, as well as to give it a few winds, give it some power reserve before you put it on the wrist. So let's see what it's like to use this crown. We'll pop this out. And the movement hacks. And it feels really great when you're setting the time. We'll pop this back in. Currently the date is not correct, but let's watch that flip over. Oh, that was right away. Let's try that again. Oh, there we go. So the date flipped over right at midnight, but the day was offset. I was kind of nervous there for a bit, but once I got the time around 7:30, then it kind of popped over, and now we have Saturday, and the 27th. Still not correct, but we get to see it flip over. All right, let's try setting the date. If I can get the crown in the position. There we go. And then the day. And is that a kanji dial? I think so. Yeah. And pop that back in. It's kind of tricky getting it into the date setting mode, but yeah. And looking at this dial, it's tough to tell in pictures. Hopefully you can see it in video here. But this crystal is actually tinted. I feel like in photos it just kind of looks like the dial is colored that way. But it's actually the crystal, which is super cool. I absolutely love that. The markers on this watch are very sci-fi. You can see that they're just below the crystal, and then there's space beneath them and the dial down inside. I love the combination of these markers and these fat square-shaped hands. Just fits the aesthetic of this watch super well. And then we have a minimal amount of text on the dial. There's little bits on the inside of the crystal. I'm thinking maybe it's old loom that's kind of come off. But for anyone who wants to brave taking this case back off, it should be fairly simple to go in there and kind of blow that out and then put it back together. As for the specifications on this watch, the case size is 37 millimeters, the case height is 11 millimeters, the lug to lug is 39 millimeters, and the lug width is 18 millimeters. Alright, so let me take off my Hamilton quartz watch, and we'll see what this amazing sci-fi watch looks like when it's on your wrist. Alright, there is the Louis Rossel on my 7-inch wrist, and yeah, that is so cool. I put this on the time grapher, and as you can see, it is performing really impressively. It has great amplitude, 0 beat error, and it's running less than half a minute fast per day, which is pretty amazing for a vintage piece. That is pretty cool. Oh, that's so unique. That bracelet looks just crazy. So this watch is being put out there for anyone who wants to trade for it. My email address is in the description below to make that easier for you to find. Just shoot me an email if you do want to trade for this. Let me know what you're offering and send some pictures of it. If it's mechanical, if you can, get a reading on it. Just kind of give me an idea of how it's running. And be sure to check out James Blonde's Instagram and his eBay store, where he sells other amazing watches, kind of like this one. The links to both of those are also in the description. And in my first impressions video, I went over some of the pieces that were currently in his shop, so be sure to check that video out also. And I mean, if no one wants to trade for this, I suppose I'd have to hang on to it for a while. Unless James Blonde wants me to send it back, of course. So cool. So there you have it, the super retro space age Louis Rossel watch. I mean, that crystal looks absolutely amazing in person. Thanks for watching.